Evening viewers, welcome to the PI show. My name's Martin Smith. I'm here standing in for Harry Nowicki, who's having a break. And here with me tonight we've got Tony Cabone, who you've all heard from before.
Good
Tony,
evening, viewers.
Any hot topics this week?
Before we get on to that, Marty, you've been around the law how long? 35 years?
It sounds like a long time, yeah, 35 years, 75 I think.
Still young at heart, yeah. That's the key. Yeah, Marty, the hot topic is this of the insulation bats, you know, the government grant or the subsidy to install the bats and all the deaths that have resulted from that.
Deaths, injuries, house fires, yeah.
There's been about 4 or 5 deaths for people installing the bats, and there's also been a few people burnt to death by fires created by poor installation and things like that.
Excuse the pun, it is a hot topic, of course, and the reality is it's huge. There's 200,000 homes, I understand, that have to have safety checks. What does that mean for the injured people, etc.? It's all going to be decided on the facts, I think, Tony.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that it's amazing how you've got this money going out to the public and there's no check to see what qualifications they've got to install.
Yep.
You don't know what training they've had. Yep. You don't know if they're shoddy. You don't know. It's just like a grab for cash.
It seems as though, as you said earlier, safety issues. What were the safety issues? Who did the audits? Who trained these people? Who's going to be held responsible? Well, you can be assured that when the coroner's inquest start, there'll be a lot of questions asked as to what the safety issues were, again, what the training was, who went out and audited that the jobs were done correctly. To put a worker and installer at such a risky situation that they can be killed just seems ridiculous.
And what about the homeowners, you know? They're in a house unsuspecting and the fires that are created by the poor installation and things like that. But look, this is a topic we can come back to because no doubt there'll be a lot coming from it in the future. So I think we'll come back to it in another episode in the future.
Okay. Tonight's topic?
Yeah, tonight's topic, sport injuries.
Sport injuries.
Very hot topic as well, Martin, because everyone's got children and this case of you sending your son or daughter off to play for a club or a school, what's your main concern there?
Well, I didn't turn my mind to it till I saw the topic, but I do ask, how many parents take for granted when their child goes off and plays sport at school or at your local club, whether it be the tennis club, the football club for the juniors? Do you know what insurance policy covers the school, covers the club, covers what injuries? Do you know the extent of that policy? We don't.
So you're saying that it's possible that they might only be covered for medical expenses and
Correct.
Nothing else?
You know, and so if somebody gets really badly injured, they need rehabilitation, they need carers involved, etc. Look, there are cases, the one that comes to mind, which is at a different level, but it's probably the highest verdict in the state of Victoria, was a fellow that was training for wrestling at, I think it was called the Footscray TAFE or Footscray University. Don't think it can happen because it can happen. They weren't properly supervised. There was an illegal move or an illegal throw, and the person ended up to be a high-level quadriplegic.
Well, it was a case of supervision and training, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
And that happens, and you'd think that could happen quite a bit in case of taekwondo, karate, martial arts, that sort of thing.
That was a verdict in excess of $5 million, I think, and the pain and suffering component, as I think I said on a previous show, was in excess of $530,000.
Doesn't that raise another interesting point? Assuming you're going to go and join one of these clubs, you want to know that they're covered for insurance, because this one here, you say it was $5.3 million, but assuming that the place wasn't, they didn't have proper insurance, then what would have happened?
Well, do you take for granted? You know, I've got little children, they go off and they're going down to the swimming centre today, or they're going in a cross-country run, or they're going to do all the numerous sporting activities that kids are to be involved in. What coverage have they got? I'd like to see more parents ask school councils and school principals, what is the policy that covers these children if they get injured?
So ask, don't come afterwards, after your child's been injured, don't come back and say, what can I do? Ask that way you've got prevention, which is better than the cure, isn't that right?
Yep. Now there's other cases which we talk about appropriate equipment. When you think of sport involves equipment. There's cases which we'll go to probably at the next segment, which talk about young children going to cricket, should they be wearing helmets, etc.
In this day and age, it's a must, I would have thought.
I would have thought so
and
too.
And it wouldn't be children, I think everyone should be wearing helmets. I've thinking of taking it up myself again, Martin. I don't think I'll be playing without a helmet and pads and all sorts of things.
Right, you've got bikes. Bike helmets are obviously compulsory, required by law. You've got tennis, what equipment. You've got cricket, obviously they've got to wear protective clothing, protective helmets. You've got any number of sports. Children go and play football. Should they be required to wear a mouthpiece? We can go on and on, but in due course...
Can I take you to a case, Martin? Let's give an example of one. There was a case of Flavor in the state of South Australia, 2008 decision. This was a person, a young child, 16-year-old that was injured on a school excursion where they were doing windsurfing.
Correct.
And without going into too much detail on the facts, what we had is someone giving instruction to these children on how to use the windsurfing, and they went from just straight training of how to use a windsurfer to actually racing.
Yeah,
and then what happened?
Isn't that interesting? They go from a day of instruction, a day of how to learn it, the next day they're out there and they're racing. Now, the first judge that heard the case, believe it or not, he found that the state or the supervisors weren't responsible, but then it went to the Court of Appeal. At the Court of Appeal, expert evidence was given, and Mr. Todd was a fellow who was a windsurf expert. He said that the area was not suited to racing and argued that when the students were put into a competitive situation, they might extend themselves further than they otherwise would. Therefore, there is more risk of somebody falling.
So, Martin, what the court said was that focusing on reaching that maximum speed to win the race meant that there was a high level of risk and people disregarding the risk. And
Correct.
so you've got inexperienced people trying to use a windsurfer, and all of a sudden accidents occur.
They were put into an environment where they're trained how to use a basic windsurfer. The next step, they were put into a racing environment. It was poor supervision.
Put in a situation of danger.
That's correct.
Yeah, where they couldn't look after themselves.
But again, always remember you've got to get the exact facts. You've got to go and get all that information, that extra bit of evidence from that expert to say it wasn't an area that was properly suited for racing to occur, and to go through the basic instructions and then put people in a race environment. All those are such pertinent facts that you've got to obtain.
So you'd also be telling your children, make sure that you get proper training, proper supervision, protective equipment, all sorts of things.
Yes.
You'd run around that down their throat as well, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Don't leave it just to the experts and so-called experts.
Look, there's a number of other cases we'll be discussing in the next segment, a lot of them to do with children.
Marty, we've got to go to a sponsors break, so we'll do that now. Viewers, keep watching and we'll see you shortly.
Thank you.